It's over. Nothing is over. Nothing.
Hi, and welcome to Terrence's Classic Rock Corner podcast.
Nice touch.
On this particular show, I talk about classic rock albums that either had an impact on my life, or rock music in general, or both. And be rest assured, there's no country or rap nonsense to be found here.
Nice touch.
So welcome to Terrence's Classic Rock Corner podcast.
Nice touch.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. It's the Classic Rock Brainiac, and now 47-year-old rock and roll brainiac, Terrence Reardon, on Terrence's Classic Rock Corner podcast. Sorry for lack thereof of new episodes in recent days and weeks, but I've been sidetracked by a thing called life, and also some things that just get in the way. But I'm back with a new episode, old but new, and it's a revised version of the Styx episode I aired a few months ago as part of Terrence Reardon podcast. Now being re-edited, re-aired, with a lot of the profanities excised on an album by a Chicago-based quintet called Styx in their 1977 classic, The Grand Illusion. Like I said, some of these episodes I had to pull down and re-edit them and get rid of the profanities, or as many of them as possible. I'll leave a few stray ones in, but because there's people who didn't like it, I have to listen to the people. And I gotta give the people what they want. And if one person says, hey, could you please change it? Mission accomplished. But before I do that, I will have some good news to talk about in the next episode, which will precede the 45th anniversary of another re-edited episode that I'm re-editing on an album that celebrates 45 years next week. But for this week, I have to talk about the tragedies in the world of rock and roll. We lost a few people in the last few days. They're dropping like flies now. First, we lost the great, legendary Yardbird Jeff Beck, one of the best guitarists that ever walked on planet Earth. A man who started as a Yardbird, but then when he flew the coop, he formed the Jeff Beck group. And yeah, it's Jeff Beck. We lost Jeff Beck. Hard to believe. Bacterial meningitis at 78 years of age. This was a shocker, because Jeff Beck, I was a fan of his guitar playing and his guest spots on many albums, including Ozzy Osbourne's final recent album, Patient Number 9. He was also on Brian May of Queen's Another World on a song called The Governor, which Brian May wrote about Jeff Beck. In fact, Jeff Beck called Brian May the Governor on a Queen documentary, so it was Brian's return favor a dozen years later or so, or so they say. And of course, Roger Waters is amused to death, which I have an episode recorded on that, but I don't want to air it right now. But I'll wait till the time is right, because I don't want people to accuse me of jumping on a bandwagon. But I loved his playing on that album. But Jeff Beck also... and Rod Stewart. Jeff Beck was responsible for Rod Stewart and Ron Wood, because those two joined Jeff Beck after he flew the Yardbird coupe, which he was replaced by Jimmy Page. And the Jeff Beck group created the first prototype hard rock album, which would lead to the Led Zeppelin boom the following year. Jeff Beck beat Led Zeppelin by a year. And Jeff Beck's band included Rod Stewart, Ron Wood, who would later leave with Rod Stewart to form the Faces, with Kenny Jones and Ronnie Lane of the Small Faces. But yeah, the original Jeff Beck group did 2 albums together, and then Cozy Powell came in as a drummer, so he was a launching pad for Cozy, God rest his soul. Beck, Bogart, and Appice, another great act. Carmine Appice played with Jeff Beck. And then the trio of jazz fusion albums Jeff Beck did, Blow by Blow, Wired, and There and Back. All 3 of those albums are killer, and as I'm playing the song The Pump in the background, which has always been one of my favorite instrumentals of Jeff, he was a creative player. And of course on that album he had Mo Foster, who would play with Phil Collins on Hello, I Must Be Going, which will be re-aired soon, and Simon Phillips, who just came off of working with Judas Priest, Mike Rutherford of Genesis, and would go on to play with Pete Townsend in his solo career and for 1 year with The Who. So Jeff Beck was a very great guitarist who worked with a great roster of musicians. And Simon Phillips, to me, was the best drummer that Jeff Beck ever had. And the Pump, my God. You can thank the movie Risky Business for me liking that tune, because that instrumental is just so killer. Especially, I think Jeff Beck was given a sample of the movie, and Tom Cruise driving that Porsche, and he's like, throw that song in the movie, why not? Because Jeff Beck's love outside of rock music, hot rods and sports cars. And he was also great friends with David Gilmour. A whole host of rock legends paid their respect to Jeff Beck. God rest Jeff Beck's soul. We also lost Robbie Bachman of Bachman Turner Overdrive, the drummer on those classic albums, Not Fragile, BTO, and on hits like You Ain't Seen Nothing Yet, Let It Ride, Rolling Down the Highway, Taking Care of Business. I think the aforementioned You Ain't Seen Nothing Yet. Another band that helped pave Canadian rock into what it eventually turned into in the early 80s, BTO were innovating. So God rest the soul of him. David Crosby, of course, we lost him. He, of course, sang with the Byrds, was a founding member of the Byrds in Crosby, Stills, and Nash, and sometimes Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young, when Neil Young was there. And his work with them was great. He was the link that kind of held it all together. And, of course, the Crosby, Stills, and Nash albums, the self-titled from 69, the CSN album from 77, Daylight Again from 82, all quality albums. And the CSNY albums, Deja Vu, the live album, the single Ohio, and American Dream had its moments, and Looking Forward had its moments. And David Crosby, of course, an amazing backing singer as well, and did guest appearances on albums for Phil Collins, but seriously, on the songs That's the Way It Is, and the song entitled Another Day in Paradise, which was a hit for Phil in 1989 going into 90. And also, David Crosby then returned the favor Phil did and sang the song Hero, which Phil Collins wrote for David Crosby, which was released in 93, 94, and that was David Crosby's last big hit. And Phil Collins was a huge David Crosby fan, as was David Gilmour of Pink Floyd, and Crosby appeared on 2 of Gilmour's albums. On an Island, on the album's title cut, and actually sang that live with Gilmour, along with Nash, and The Blue, on the Remember That Night film, Shine On You Crazy Diamond, on that said concert film Remember That Night, and Find the Cost of Freedom, a live version also surfaced on, what was that album? Live in Gdansk, that was recorded in Scotland. And then, of course, David Crosby would then return, along with Graham Nash, for Rattle That Lock from David Gilmour on the song A Boat Lies Waiting, which was a tribute to Rick Wright. And David Crosby at the Royal Albert Hall got to recreate that back-end vocal part, and then harmonizing Comfortably Numb with Graham Nash at that Royal Albert Hall show in 2015. And Crosby's last stand with David Gilmour was in 2016 at the Hollywood Bowl, where Crosby would harmonize on an Island, A Boat Lies Waiting, and did the duet vocal on Comfortably Numb. Did it his way. He didn't have to be Roger Waters. It was a good thing to hear David Crosby sing that doctor part. Always a nice, different little angle approach, you know? I may not have agreed with his politics, but I can't deny the guy's talent. The guy was a great egg. A little opinionated, but sometimes you need opinionated people in this world. God rest your soul, David Crosby. Sail on, my brother. Hopefully we'll see you perform it in that great gig in the sky. And now we also lost video director, music video pioneer director, Bruce Gowers. The man that was famous for shooting all those early Queen videos from the first album up through Day at the Races. So yeah, he was responsible for Bohemian Rhapsody, Somebody to Love, Tie Your Mother Down, live at the Rainbow concert, live Hyde Park 76. And Bruce Gowers also directed videos for Genesis for A Trick of the Tail, the Rolling Stones for the Black and Blue video clips. And he also directed their concert film in '97 from the Bridges to Babylon tour in St. Louis. And he also directed videos for ELO, all of Rod Stewart's concert music videos from Tonight's the Night all the way through Passion on 1980's Foolish Behavior. Before that, the video director role was taken over by Russell Mulcahy, who thankfully is still with us. And Bruce Gowers also shot the videos for Rod Stewart's concert films from LA in '79 and '81. And he also directed videos for John Cougar, the Bee Gees, Supertramp, Doobie Brothers, Styx. He did those Pieces of 8 promo videos, which were amazing. And I will be talking more about his directing style. And he, along with David Mallet, who thankfully is still with us, and Russell Mulcahy, were the 3 innovators of rock music video shooting. Bruce Gowers, may you rest in peace, God rest your soul, and I hope wherever you are, you're producing a killer, kick-ass rock music video wherever you are at the rock and roll heaven above. So on that note, let's switch gears and talk about The Grand Illusion by Styx, originally recorded last year but re-edited and revised at the beginning of this year by yours truly. I hope you enjoy it. Styx, and their 1977 classic, The Grand Illusion. The Chicago-based quintet Styx released their 7th album, The Grand Illusion, in July of 1977. It was their 7th album, and it was released on, yep, you guessed it, 7/7/77. Oh my God. I mean, the Midwest has always been a difficult place for rock and roll bands to establish themselves. You know, people like REO Speedwagon, John Mellencamp, and Cheap Trick, and even Bob Seger had difficulty breaking out of the Midwest for a long time. But no one knew the arduous journey from nowhere to national favorites like Styx. The Chicago-based quintet named after the river in Greek mythology that ran through hell. And it took Styx 7 albums in as many years to break out of the Midwest mediocrity thing with the release of their album The Grand Illusion, released in July of 1977, and it was the 2nd album with their classic lineup. Lead singer, keyboard player Dennis DeYoung, guitarist Tommy Shaw, who had just joined the band at the end of '75, replacing founding member, who was that founding? Oh yeah, John Serleski. This is Tommy's 2nd album with the band, and Tommy and Dennis both have the same equal amount of tracks in the album, technically speaking, singing-wise. Lead guitarist, or co-lead guitarist, occasional songwriter James J.Y. Young, and the rhythm section of Chuck and John Panazzo. So with this album, The Grand Illusion, Styx finally broke out of, languishing in obscurity and being labeled pretty much a one-hit wonder to being a juggernaut over the next, pretty much for the next decade and a half. Even with the little 6-year break, when they came back in 1991, they had a top 5 hit in the 90s and a top 30 hit in the 90s. So yeah, Styx, from The Grand Illusion forward, would see nothing but success, success, and more success. And the title of The Grand Illusion came to Dennis DeYoung during the making of the 1975 album Equinox. A friend of his brought that up, because, about seeing, adverts of all this perfect stuff, and then hearing on the radio adverts for all this stuff, and then, seeing in the magazines, the newspapers, now on your internet computers. Don't be fooled by what you see, because it's all reality. And Dennis DeYoung was just intrigued by, the phrase "the Grand Illusion," and with this album, it was Styx's third with A&M Records, which they signed with A&M at the end of 1975. That year was a very pivotal one for Styx because they had released the album Equinox actually they had their first top 10 hit in 75, Lady, which happened 2 years after its initial release. And they got signed to A&M Records. Herb Alpert, I think, heard Lady on the radio and said, you know what, I think we should get Styx on our label. So Herb Alpert and Jerry Moss signed Styx a great deal to A&M Records and nurtured Styx. And Styx made it perfectly clear that they were not going to sing about being in L.A. They insisted as being from Chicago as you could possibly imagine. So yeah, a lot of songs had references to the band's Chicago roots. And the band recorded their albums in Chicago, Illinois. And this album was no exception. The Grand Illusion was the third in a row to be recorded at Paragon Studios, with, once again, the late Barry Moraz as engineer and also engineering Rob Kingsland, who was also Styx's sound man for many, many years. So Styx were still making great records. Equinox, whilst it was a great album, it didn't do as well as expected. Then again, it came out just a month before Frampton Comes Alive, so Styx sort of went on a downward slide with the sales of Equinox. And before Equinox was released, guitarist John Serleski, a founding member, decided to leave the band because he was homesick, didn't want to be away from his family, and also, musical differences sort of forced him out of the band, and sadly he would pass away in 1988. So when he left the band, it opened the door for a southern boy to join, that being Tommy Shaw, who was no older than 22 years old when he joined Styx. Unbelievable. And also in 1975, Styx got brand new managers out of Derek Sutton, the guy that helped see the rise of success for 10 Years After and Robin Trower. And he wanted the band to be just like them with the media and the press. Equinox was a respectable hit, but then again, like I said, because of Frampton Comes Alive outselling everything on A&M, Equinox sold fewer copies than expected. It did respectable, but it was not the hit that they expected. And then Tommy Shaw's first album with the label, Equinox, in fact sold fewer copies. So Styx were now on the downward slide. Although in Canada, they were huge. And Styx were still having to play middle of the bill or opening for the likes of Roxy Music, ZZ Top, Kiss, Rush. All these bands, Styx were still an opening act. And Dennis DeYoung even once said opening for Kiss was a great learning curve on how to to entertain a crowd. And also, I think he borrowed some of their theatrical elements to put into the rock and roll shows. He borrowed from Alice Cooper, and he also borrowed from Kiss. So that's where the rock theatrics came from. It did not come from, I got a feeling, love is here to stay. Who is I think of Broadway. Anyway, I digress. So with the Crystal Ball album selling fewer copies than Equinox, the panic alarm was hit for the Styx members. They knew if the next album was not a hit, A&M may well have dropped them. So Dennis DeYoung went into a depression. For one, he was kind of not happy with the way the first two A&M albums were not selling as well as he expected, although they eventually went gold. And he was also not happy having to be away from his wife and daughter for prolonged periods of time. So he had a nervous breakdown, and during that time frame, he began writing the songs that would construe the Grand Illusion album. And he was very depressed when he wrote one of the songs in the album, which I will tell you when I get to it. But like I said, the album was recorded at Paragon Studios during the first part of the year, and during the making of this album, Dennis DeYoung decided to use a new keyboard. Because up until then he had used either an ARP Odyssey or a Mini Moog. But Mini Moogs he was having trouble with, so then he got himself his first Oberheim synthesizer, which made its debut on this album, the Oberheim 4-voice synthesizer, which of course would become the Dennis DeYoung synthesizer. Oberheim. Oberheim was to Dennis DeYoung what the Moog was to the late, great Keith Emerson. And to the late Richard Wright of Pink Floyd, may he also rest in peace, and to Rick Wakeman. Tony Banks was an ARP Quadri guy, so he didn't use the Moog. He stayed away from the Moog. Actually, he did have a Poly Moog for the, and then there were 3 tour, but that's another story for another day. But The Grand Illusion was recorded in early '77, and then the band was kind of nervous about releasing the album before, out of fear of as my brain goes, brain fart. The album was readied for release, and they were kind of nervous that if the album was a flop, it would have been the band's last at-bat for A&M Records. And my backstory with this album, we go all the way back to the double live 1984 Styx album, Caught in the Act, which was the live document of the Kilroy tour. Some people hate that live album. Others love that live album. You either love it or you hate it. I love it. I love it so much that it was the first Styx album I got the year of its release. I was an 8-year-old. Although, if you watch my Kilroy Was Here / Caught in the Act episode, you'll understand why I didn't own Kilroy until '95. It was because the album cover petrified me. But Caught in the Act was a live album, and the way I saw it was a double live album. It was an overview to some songs I may not have heard before. And it turns out that 3 of the songs from The Grand Illusion are on that said double live album. Fooling Yourself, Miss America, and Come Sail Away. So that was my introduction to this album, was that live album, God Bless Caught in the Act. And I loved it so much that in March 1985, when my parents were away for, I think to go to something for my grandparents, I have no clue, I bought this album with my own money. This was the very first album I ever bought with my own money in March 1985 on cassette. I was a 9-year-old kid, already into rock and roll. You know my history. Big into Pink Floyd, the Eagles, Van Halen, Ozzy Osbourne, Rolling Stones, John Fogerty, Creedence, Bob Seger, on down the list. Quiet Riot, Def Leppard, when they were 10-armed Def Leppard. And Quiet Riot. Yeah, those 2 albums with the classic lineup were great. Ozzy Osbourne, and Styx, and Van Halen. Yes, I was into Van Halen big time. The original lineup, that is. And I got, and I already had, by that point, Caught in the Act on cassette, Cornerstone on cassette, and Paradise Theater on cassette, and Dennis DeYoung's first solo album, Desert Moon, and Tommy Shaw's first solo album, Girls with Guns. So, I had $6 doing chores around the house, and had money. It was either for toys or another album. So I decided to expand my cassette collection. By then I had nearly 100 cassette tapes to my name as a 9-year-old kid. You can ask my brothers and sisters about that. And my godmother, the lady that became my godmother, Dee Dee, took me to a department store called Caldor, which was, for you people born in the 90s and 2000s, don't remember Caldor. It was the northeast version of Walmart and or Target. But Caldor's tape section, it was like a huge record store inside this department store. And the only time I would go there was to get a fucking album. That's how great it was. Because they had such an amazing kick-ass selection. I knew I was collecting Styx at that point, and I saw the Grand Illusion album cover, that Magritte painting by Kelly and Mouse Studios, the same company that gave you album covers by the Grateful Dead, although I'm no fan of theirs, Journey, God bless them, Journey, of course, used them for many albums up through Escape. And they also did the album cover for Steve Miller's Book of Dreams, which was just released 2 months before. 2 months before Grand Illusion. They also did the front cover for Steve Miller's Greatest Hits the following year, that Pegasus, which became a Steve Miller trademark. So this album cover, which depicted like this weird painting of trees, and it looks like a woman's lips and eyes, and if you look to the surface, it looks like someone riding a horse. That's what the front cover painting looked like. And then I didn't have this, and that album cover intrigued me. The album, intrigued me, and I already knew 3 songs from it, so I was like, this has got to be a great record. After hearing the album for the first time as a 9-year-old kid, it was love at first listen. And this is tied his favorite Styx album. I go back and forth between Paradise Theater and this one. I don't know why, but both albums are just like, some days Paradise Theater is number 1, other days The Grand Illusion is number 1. And I'll explain why. And since then, I've had the cassette, I've had the CD, the original vinyl with the poster, and on the CD, the remastered on the CD, you get the back cover of the album, the lyrics, and the credits. You didn't get the poster that came with it, but you got everything that came inside the inner sleeve of the original album. So what do I think of the songs? Well, I'll begin my love fest for this album right this instant. We begin with the epic title cut, which was written by singer, songwriter, keyboard player Dennis DeYoung, and it begins in the triumphant key of F. Dun, 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 that thing, and then it changes keys to A flat, and then all of a sudden after that fanfare intro into Welcome to the Grand Illusion, come on in and see what's happening, pay the price, get your tickets for the show. The stage is set, the band starts playing, suddenly your heart is pounding, wishing secretly you were a star. And in the lyrics, Dennis DeYoung's basically saying, don't be fooled and deceived by all of the, what you hear on the radio, the TV, or the magazines, or in today's day and age, the internet, or the newspapers. They show you photographs of how your life should be, but they're just someone else's fantasy. Just amazing. And then, of course, the chorus being, so if you think your life is complete confusion, but because you never win the game, just remember that it's a grand illusion, because deep inside we're all the same. We're all the same, and then all of a sudden you're the echoplex of Dennis DeYoung going same, panning on either side of your stereo. Amazing effect. And this was actually the 3rd Styx album in a row where the band members produced the album themselves. Although technically it was Dennis DeYoung doing the producing, but he gave the rest of the guys a production credit because he was just that generous. And even Tommy Shaw was learning how to record produce, being, the band producing. And speaking of Tommy Shaw, he lets rip a guitar solo that just, every time I hear that guitar solo, it's just like him just shredding like a motherfucker, especially him using the Gibson Les Paul, that gold Les Paul, or that yellow Les Paul that he used at the time, going through the Marshall stacks. This was the last album for a long while he would use Marshall amplifiers, because starting with the next album, he would switch over to Hiwatt, the amplifiers that made Pete Townsend and David Gilmour famous, and many progressive rock bands famous, Hiwatt. But on the Grand Illusion, it was the Marshall stacks. And Tommy Shaw just shredding that first guitar solo, just kicking everyone's ass. Then into a repeat motif of the intro, the do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do. Oh my God. And then you have the second chorus after a repeat of that intro. So if you think your life is complete confusion because your neighbors got it made, just remember that it's a grand illusion and deep inside we're all the same. And then J.Y. does a guitar solo, which is just very short and effective. And that was done on a Fender Stratocaster through a Marshall stack. Although on some tours he would not use the Stratocaster. He would do the solo on a Yamaha SG. Oh my God. And then of course the final verse America spells competition. Join us in our blind ambition. Get yourself a brand new motor car. And then the ending with the ARP string synths going, or the Selena strings going. Someday soon we'll stop to ponder what on earth's the spell we're under. We made the grade and still we wonder who the hell we are. And then it ends with that majestic ending with the synthesizers going in a major, major way. And this song would be the opening song on the subsequent tour. When the song was played live, they would do the intro just like the record. Then all of a sudden, when Dennis DeYoung sang the first verse, the "Welcome to the Grand Illusion," the band would add a triumphant fanfare, the da 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 da. Come on in and see what's happening. Da 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 da. Pay the price, get your tickets for the. And then the pyro would go off, boom, right before the show. You're like, wow. Oh my God! Someday, the stage is set, the band starts playing, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Suddenly your heart is pounding, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Wishing secretly you were a star. Kind of giving it a more bombastic entrance, playing the song live. I think that's why they did the song like that, to give it a more epic intro. Even the ending was more epic. And Tommy Shaw's guitar solo would be extended in the middle. And Dennis would sing that first part of the song without keyboards. He would walk to the front of the stage. And then this song would be played on every tour up through the Paradise Theater tour. Live version would be played on the Main Event tour, which was the tour for the Pieces of 8 album. I think it was like the third or fourth song in the set. Actually, it was third song in the set on that tour. And I think it was the third or fourth song in the set on the tour for, what was that album? I'm trying to remember. The Grand Decathlon Tour, the Cornerstone Tour. And then, of course, it was technically the fourth song on the Paradise Theater Tour, because when Dennis DeYoung would greet the crowd, say good evening after playing the first two songs on the Paradise Theater Tour, and then he would say, something was missing, which was you, the fans. And we have so much magic, we don't know if this is real or a grand illusion. And then right into the song. Those live versions from '81, JY used the Yamaha SG guitar instead of his Fender Stratocaster. And Tommy Shaw was using the Gibson Explorer, that black one, that with the white pickguard. And at that point, they were using, instead of Marshall stacks, they were using high-watt amplifiers that were custom to say Heineken on the speaker cabinets, when in fact they were still high watts, because the guys in Styx sure as hell loved their Heineken beer. I mean, Dennis DeYoung didn't drink beer as much as the other guys in the band, but he would have a Heineken every now and again. But yeah, that song, of course, a live staple, a classic rock radio staple. Wasn't released as a single, but it does appear on many of their compilation albums. And when Dennis DeYoung performs this song live, he still does the live version as he did it in Styx back in the day, with the triumphant after the verse. And then, whereas Gowan, the leprechaun, that piece of shit, had to do everything just like the original record. I cannot hear the live version without the triumphant fanfare. The studio version's great and all, but that fanfare in that live version, godly. And that leads, that song, great opener, and that leads into the first Tommy Shaw song in the album, called Fooling Yourself, subtitled The Angry Young Man. And basically, the song was written by Tommy Shaw. Basically, it was originally based on Tommy Shaw's initial perception of Styx keyboard player, co-founder Dennis DeYoung, who he saw as an angry young man who viewed the group's successes and failures with a very conscious eye and would get depressed with every setback. And it was only in later years that Tommy Shaw eventually began to see himself in the lyrics, and the song eventually took a more personal view with Tommy. But my God, this song is amazing. It begins with Dennis DeYoung using those Oberheim synthesizers, JY using an ARP Odyssey Live, Tommy Shaw on acoustic guitar, and this is the only song in the album where Tommy sings and he doesn't do a solo. that, of course, is Dennis DeYoung on synthesizer solos with the Oberheim 4 voice. And, of course, the lyrics perfectly say it. You see the world through your cynical eyes. You're a troubled young man, that I can tell. You got it all in the palm of your hands, but your hands wet with sweat and your head needs a rest. And you're fooling yourself if you don't believe it. And you're kidding yourself if you don't believe it. And then, why must you be such an angry young man when your future looks quite bright to me? How can there be such a sinister plan that could hide such a lamb, such a caring young man? And you're fooling, and then of course repeat of the chorus, and then the main chorus being get up, and then JY and Dennis singing the chorus, get up, get back on your feet, with JY singing the high and Dennis the low. You know, get back on your feet, you're the one they can beat, and you know it. And then Tommy goes, yeah, come on. Then JY and Dennis goes, come on, let's see what you got, just take your best shot and don't blow it up. And then all of a sudden into this Chuck Panozzo and John Panozzo's bong, gong, gong. Chuck on that Rickenbacker bass. Later he would use a Rickenbacker in later versions, and John Panozzo with that drum kit of his going boom, boom, boom. Into the come on, Doctor, Dennis DeYoung's Oberheim synthesizer solo, which just amazing, majestic, just an amazing song. And then of course a repeat of the chorus. You know, you're fooling yourself and you don't believe it. You're killing yourself and you don't believe it. Or is it you're kidding yourself? Yeah, you're killing yourself if you don't believe it. And then a repeat of the final chorus. And then all of a sudden into a repeat, you know, the ending where Tommy Shaw is just going crazy on the acoustic guitar, going do 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 do, into that ending synthesizer solo with Dennis DeYoung just going ape shit on that Oberheim 4-voice synthesizer of his, just having his fingers moving across the synthesizer like a wizard. And this song was played live on every tour from the time of its release up until Tommy Shaw left the band towards the end of the Kilroy tour because of his drug dependency. But yeah, the song, for the first 2 tours they played the song, being the Grand Illusion and Main Event tours, aka the Pieces of 8 tour, Tommy Shaw played his acoustic guitar parts on a Gibson double neck. A Gibson double neck with 12 strings on top. So he would be playing the acoustic part with a clean sounding 12-string electric guitar, although it was the top neck of his Gibson double neck, the same double neck that Jimmy Page had. And then Tommy Shaw would eventually have it custom to being a double neck 12-string guitar, being 2 12-string necks on the same double neck, having the 6-string neck replaced with the 12-string neck. But yeah, on that the Pieces of 8 tour and the Grand Illusion tour, he used the double neck Gibson electric on the song live, and then on subsequent live versions he would play it on acoustic guitar, because acoustic guitar amplification by 1979 was much better. And he used a Guild 6-string acoustic on the next 2 tours, then a Martin, I believe, on the Kilroy tour. But yeah, he used the Guild acoustic guitar on the Grand Decathlon and Main Event tour and Paradise Theater tours. And then Dennis DeYoung would replace some of the string synth parts with an Oberheim OBX on the Paradise Theater tour in 1980. And when Tommy Shaw introduced this song on the said Paradise Theater tour, he would do it like as if he was a 90-year-old man from the South. But the song was released as a single. It was the second single from the album, and it peaked at number 29 on the Billboard Hot 100 on the 22nd of April, 1978. The reason I know this is because I'm using Billboard magazine to help me with this review, because remember, I've been banned from Wikipedia for life, plus also an assist to Genius.com and In the Studio with Redbeard for helping me with this review. So fooling yourself, great song, not much more to add. Now we get to a deep track in the album, which was not played live on the initial tour in support of the album, Superstars, which was written by Tommy, JY, and Dennis DeYoung. And the song was mainly sung by Tommy Shaw, except for the soliloquy after the guitar solo. And the song features Tommy Shaw on all the lead guitar parts. He does the guitar solos via multi-track. And JY and Tommy harmonizing on the "You and I, we will climb so high, we'll be superstars, whoa, whoa, you and I." So it'd be Dennis singing the low end, Tommy the middle, and JY that banshee high pitch. And then Tommy, of course, sings "See You Read Me About Me in the Papers, you've seen me on the movie screen, you know everything there is to know about me, I'm your late night fantasy. But I don't think I can hear your name calling from the shadow of the 14th row, because I had the same dreams as you had just a few short years ago, and that's why I know." And then a repeat of the chorus, and then "We'll just close our eyes, will become a fantasy," into a repeat of the intro to the song, brilliantly done, into the double track Tommy Shaw lead guitar solo, which is all him on the record. So I think this is one of the reasons why it was not ever played live back in 1970. Yeah, during the heyday of the band, because it would have been hard for them to reproduce the guitar solo. They didn't have the technology to do so. Although when the lineup without Dennis did this live for their 2011 and 12 tour, Tommy and JY did the guitar harmony, but it just didn't really sound right. And JY doing Dennis DeYoung's soliloquy, blasphemy, because Dennis DeYoung kind of sounds like a maniacal ringleader doing the "Superstars, yes, yes, superstars, step right this way, everyone's welcome, we want your dreams, the offer's simple, momentary immortality, my love, because I've seen them all, I've seen them climb, I've seen them fall, I've seen them come, I've seen them go, and through it all, there's only one thing that matters, love, it's simply you and I, yes, yes, you and I, for we are superstars." Oh my god, this song rules. And this song was not played live on the subsequent tour in support of the album. It wasn't even played until after Dennis DeYoung was forced out of the band, but then Dennis got his retribution by playing it live when he did The Grand Illusion in its entirety live, and he got to recreate that soliloquy at the very end. And this song, a great deep track. It wasn't a single, but my god, a great song nevertheless. And I forgot to mention about the previous track, "Fooling Yourself." That appeared on various Greatest Hits albums. "Superstars" was no stranger either, because it appeared on the 1996 Greatest Hits Part 2 compilation, which is the sequel to the 1995 Greatest Hits album. So if you want all the best Styx songs remastered, I urge you to get Greatest Hits 1 and 2. If you can find Greatest Hits 2 used, that's the best remastering you can get. Because without actually, if you combine those two and the Come Sail Away Styx Anthology, aka Styx Gold from 2004, you have the best remastered versions of all the material from this album. "Superstars," great track, not much more to add, great deep track, and not much more I can say about "Superstars," but a great, great song, not much more I can tell you. Terrence, before you go into the next song, I have to update you on the song "Superstars." In an interview with Dennis DeYoung recently, actually sometime last year or in 2021, Dennis DeYoung actually revealed about the song "Superstars" that it was originally going to be picked as the first single for The Grand Illusion. And it was caught between "Fooling Yourself" and the next track, "Come Sail Away," which, spoilers, the next song. And Dennis DeYoung said it was like putting a girl between Salma Hayek and J-Lo or something. To me, it was like if you would put it between Stacy Keibler and Linda Blair, for my analogy. The two prettiest things I've ever seen in my life. There were celebrities. Not counting my friend Danielle from college, who I'm still friends with after all these years. It's a cute girl, thinks Sarah Michelle Gellar, but it's between two babes. It's like, still a great song, though. But Dennis DeYoung and the rest of the band, we want to go with the 6-minute tune, not this song. Whilst it's good, it's nothing between what came before it and what comes after. So Dennis DeYoung and the rest of Styx stuck to their guns, saying, we want the song that follows this to be the first single from the album. Whilst Styx's manager at the time, Derek Sutton, and A&M's Jerry Moss wanted Superstars. But Styx in the A of A&M, Herb Alpert, luckily had other ideas. And that was the song that follows Superstars. And now we come to the end of side 1 of the album with the song Come Sail Away, written and sung by keyboard player Dennis DeYoung. And according to an interview with Behind the Vinyl on YouTube, and his interview with Redbeard on In the Studio, for the making of The Grand Illusion, Dennis was depressed when he wrote the song. And that's why he wrote it, was to escape all the traumas, because, prior to writing the song, they had some minor success with, they had the one-hit Lady, and then the first 2 A&M albums are not selling as well as expected because of a thing called Frampton Comes Alive was all over the place. No disrespect to that album, because I love that album too. And Dennis DeYoung played in Hawaii and was thinking, God, will we ever be the big guys, the big shots? And and this song eventually would wind up becoming Styx's second U.S. top 10 hit, peaking at number 6 in January 1978, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, January 28th, 1978, the song peaked at number 8 on the Billboard Singles Chart. It was their second top 10 hit. But yeah, Come Sail Away, an epic song, and like I said, Dennis DeYoung used the lyrics about escaping and using sailing as a metaphor to achieve one's dreams. And the lyrics touch on nostalgia of childhood friends, escapism, and, a gathering of angels singing a song of hope, basically a religious theme. Dennis DeYoung is a Catholic, like yours truly. So yeah, we fellow Catholics stick together, fellow Christians. And then the ending lyrics, instead of it being a gathering of angels, it transformed from a sailing ship into a spaceship, narrating they climbed aboard their starship and headed for the skies, which also may imply biblical verses from Ezekiel. And Dennis DeYoung, of course, came up with the ballad thing, and then he wrote and then Tommy Shaw, in a group situation, I think came up with the guitar part of the song. But Dennis borrowed Tommy's guitar riff, and Tommy didn't get a writing credit for it. But, in a group situation, you needed to borrow things. With that heavy guitar chorus, and then all of a sudden into that trippy progressive rock section where it's a collage of synthesizers, the Oberheim 4-voice, and the Selena string ensemble, and JY using an ARP Odyssey doing that bum 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 bum. And Dennis on one hand using the string synth, and then the other hand using the Oberheim. Oh my God, this song is, no matter how many times I've heard it, the song is amazing. Although I first heard the song in its live state, with, of course, during the singing, I'm sailing away, set an open course for the Virgin Sea because I've got to be free. And, free to face life, it's ahead of me. On board, I'm the captain, so climb aboard. We'll search for tomorrow on every shore, and I'll try, oh Lord, I'll try to carry on. When Dennis DeYoung sings it live, ever since 78 or 79, after the song became a hit, the crowd would sing the "To Carry On" instead of Dennis. Dennis would go, "Everybody sing it." And then when they would, he'd go, "Yeah." And then when they did it the second time, before the guitars kick in, he would go either "One More Time" or "From the Heart" or, dun, dun, dun. And the crowd would yell "To Carry On," and then right into the riff. And then the instrumental break, just amazing. The synthesizer solo is epic. And then Dennis DeYoung also had in mind, when the guitars came back, and of Pete Townsend doing, "Won't Get Fooled Again" windmill type guitar riffs. And Dennis DeYoung goes, I nicked that bit from Pete Townsend. Townsend doesn't have to sue me for money because he's got plenty rich. He's got plenty of money. And this song is just so epic. And the epic guitar solo at the end from Tommy Shaw makes the song even more godly. Yeah, they've played the song many a times on the radio, but no matter how many times I've heard it, I still find enjoyment. Especially it's got to be in the full 6+ minutes, because when it was released as a single, the song clocked in at approximately 3 minutes, and then the video version removed that trippy middle section. And this song would be, like I said, the band's second US top 10 hit, and also the song would be a concert staple from the moment it was released. As the first single from The Grand Illusion, the band would have the song towards the end of the set on the Grand Illusion and Pieces of 8 tours, aka the main event tour, and then starting on the Grand Decathlon tour and working all the way through most tours up through the 90s, it would be the last song in the set. So then, of course, they would extend the prelude to the synth solo, so Dennis DeYoung would go from singing in stage front to back to his keyboards to play, singing in front to go back to his keyboards to do the synth solo, which was much longer in the live setting. And then, of course, the ending would be JY and Dennis singing Come Sail Away instead of Dennis and Tommy, because Tommy Shaw would be doing a batshit guitar solo with either one of his Les Pauls, or he would be using the Gibson Explorer, which he would just shred. Especially when he started using the wireless equipment on the main event tour. During the solo on some shows, he would just run on top of Dennis DeYoung's piano and just play the solo from the ending guitar solo from Dennis's piano, and then Dennis would run, and then Tommy would leap off the piano right back onto the stage as Dennis would run and leap. Oh my God, and then they would do the big finish. Well, of course, the big finish would just get longer and longer starting on the Grand Decathlon tour, and then on the Paradise Theater tour, the ending was, just kept going and going and going and going, and then JY and Tommy did the ba-dum-dum-dum, do-do-do-do. And then Dennis DeYoung would yell, "Thank you very much, good night." And then he would throw his microphone to his keyboard tech at the time, George Lehman, and help the band finish the song like a conductor. And just stand in front of John Panazzo's drum riser and just be like conducting the band like a conductor. Brilliant. The song, the studio version, the live version, especially the version on Caught in the Act, the live album that introduced me to this album. Those versions are amazing. Live version from the Paradise Theater tour is great. I kind of lean more towards Largo, Maryland, although the Tokyo performance was great too. The live version on Return to Paradise, where Tommy Shaw resurrected as a guitar hero, because in Damn Yankees, Ted Nugent held his ass back, because Tommy's an amazing guitarist. I mean, I think he's a better lead guitarist than JY, because Tommy is a little more eclectic with his guitar playing, whereas JY is just stuck with Jimi Hendrix mode. But Come Sail Away, my God. This song rightfully appears on many Styx compilation albums. Greatest Hits, Come Sail Away Styx Anthology. I don't know what else. Oh yeah, the Caught in the Act live album, Return to Paradise. And Dennis DeYoung finishes his shows now as the final encore with this song, whereas his former bandmates do it as the final song in the set list. And Lawrence Gowan should not sing this track. This is Dennis DeYoung's baby. Gowan cannot sing. Dennis DeYoung is the man. And that's all I got to say about Come Sail Away. Epic. Now, side 2 of Styx's The Grand Illusion album, when you flip the cassette or vinyl record over, we begin proceedings with a song written and sung by guitarist James J.Y. Young. And, of course, the song is called Miss America, which was JY's scathing indictment about America's infamous beauty pageant. And JY told Redbeard in the studio that he woke up in the middle of the night with this song in his head about the Miss America beauty contest. And the song musically was inspired by Jethro Tull's Minstrel in the Gallery, although in the end it doesn't sound anything like it. And Tommy Shaw told Redbeard the song had an anger and a rage to it that we all loved, especially with the riff. And like I said, I didn't hear the studio version until a year after I acquired the double live Caught in the Act album, which was my introduction. Just like Come Sail Away and Fooling Yourself were my introduction to songs from this album, because it was a double live album on the Kilroy Tour Greatest Hits thing. And I was used to hearing Miss America, just beginning with the bass drum thing, and JY going, Are You Ready? Doing some guitar shred and pyrotechnics into the song. And on the original track, JY's voice is drenched in flames and various other things. You were the apple of the public's eyes as you cut the ribbon at the local mall, the mirage of you and us. How can it be real? You looked your body in your photograph. You're a home state. You must be proud. The Queen of the United States. Have you lost your crown? Well, aren't you Miss America? And of course, the harmonies went low, Dennis DeYoung. Middle, James J.Y. Young. In those highs of highs, Tommy Shaw. In the Miss America. And J.Y. going, Well, aren't you? Well, aren't you? Oh, my God. No, and the live version was like, Well, aren't you? Miss America. And then Dennis DeYoung, Miss America. And then Tommy Shaw with the Miss America. Oh, my God. Oh, my God. That was Tommy singing the high. J.Y. that Miss America. And Dennis DeYoung, Miss America. The low. Dennis DeYoung always sang the low harmonies live because he was always conserving his voice because he was doing a lot of the singing. That was the smart thing to do, unlike Joe Elliott of Def Leppard, who throughout his vocal cords singing the high end. Dennis was like, Nah, I'll conserve my voice. Really, who you think you are? Is that yours, or does your smiles seem to wear you down? Is the girl that you once were screaming to get out? Oh my God, the song is just so fucking catchy, and on top of that, one of Dennis DeYoung's best Oberheim synthesizer solos. Yeah, this was the first album where Dennis DeYoung used the Oberheim synthesizer, which of course he would popularize the brand, and he used an Oberheim, I believe, 4-voice in this album, because he would use the 8-voice on Pieces of 8, but he had the 4-voice, which would be perched on his synthesizer for the next, on his Hammond organ for the next 7 or 8 years. Yeah, because he would have that exact synthesizer at his keyboard set up live until the band ended. And then JY doing a guitar solo, which killer, just an amazing guitar solo. And then repeat of the chorus after the solo. And then, then into the third and final verse, especially was true. Just take a look. The cover sometimes makes the book, and the judges in the cage in your human zoo, they all shout to look at you. Oh my God, next year what will you do when you have been forgotten? Oh my God. And of course, when the song was done live on the live version on the Caught in the Act album, that section was sung pretty much the same, except for parts JY would sing in the lower range for a change, and then Tommy would just play the riff, and and JY and Dennis took a break and just a couple of those, and then JY would sing the, well, it's true, just take a look, this cover sometimes makes the judges out in your cage at the human zoo, they all stop to look at you. Oh my God. And then a final run through the chorus, and then the synthesizer thing, and then it ends with JY going, Miss America, and the riff just fading out. In the live version, on Caught in the Act, Tommy Shaw did the Miss America during JY's solo. The ending of Miss America, where Tommy and JY were now doing harmony guitars, at the Dennis DeYoung sang the Miss America, Miss America. 4 of those, and then 3 more, and then the drum chaining would be and the guitar octave leap, Miss America, Miss America, Miss America. And then Dennis DeYoung would either go, Hey babe, what's happening? Like on the Paradise Theater tour, or that note. Oh my God, into the final reprise of the synthesizer solo, and then ending with JY doing some guitar techniques, and then the band finishing with the big finish. My God. Studio version, like I said, I heard nearly a year after acquiring the Caught in the Act live albums. That's why I'm so used to the version on Caught in the Act, but the studio version is great too. I mean, although I prefer live for nostalgic purposes, studio, great. You know, my only complaint was the song faded out before it had the proper finish. But the song was held in high regard that, like 3 of the songs on side 1 of the album, it was also included on Styx's Greatest Hits album. You know, Miss America, killer tune. It's on many of their compilations, Styx Greatest Hits, and Come Sail Away, the Styx Anthology, which, to me, killer tune, killer track, amazing. Now we come to the Tommy Shaw penned Man in the Wilderness, which blended his love of acoustic and electric. This basically dispelled the myth he was just a rock and roll guy. He was a country picker, you know, Crosby, Stills and Nash folk picker, but with some rock and roll tendencies. And it begins with harmony guitars from JY and Tommy as Tommy's doing that acoustic stuff. All the acoustic stuff was Tommy, and just amazing acoustic picker. And on top of that was influenced by Kansas, and I believe the song Miracles Out of Nowhere, because Left Overture was released in the interim between Crystal Ball and The Grand Illusion, and of course Styx opened for Kansas at that time. And this song, you know, Tommy Shaw writing about a person who's stuck out there in the world and feeling like a man in the wilderness. Another year has passed me by and I look at myself and cry, what kind of man have I become? Trying to remember the rest of the lyrics. And then, of course, the chorus always hits me. Sometimes I feel like a man in the wilderness. I'm a soldier sent off to war, sent away to die, never quite knowing why. In the chorus, Tommy singing the low end and JY the high end. And Dennis DeYoung's use of the Salinas string synthesizer working great on this in the chorus, and then Tommy Shaw, of course, singing the "Sometimes It Makes No Sense at All" in the da 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 da. Oh my God, makes no sense at all. And then the second verse with Hammond organ playing and Oberheim synthesizer playing from Dennis DeYoung, and Tommy singing the second verse. Similar in tone to the first verse. I'd have to grab the CD to read the lyrics here. I'm trying to do it from memory. And I'm still in the dark because you know, it just, I don't know. Sometimes it's hard for me to put into words how beautiful this song is and how great it is and how long it actually was. Then, of course, the second chorus, which slightly differs from the first chorus. You know, the second chorus is "Sometimes I feel like a man in the wilderness. I'm a sailor lost at sea." And Dennis DeYoung's Oberheim synthesizer going as he's playing the Oberheim with one hand and the string synthesizer with the other. Drifting with the tide, never quite knowing why. Sometimes it makes no sense at all. Then the "I'm alive," that's JY, and then Dennis DeYoung going, "I'm alive." Case in point, the live version from the Grand Illusion tour. Drift on the ocean, my heart's on fire. And Dennis, "Heart's on fire, the ocean, I'm alive." And Dennis holding the string synth with his left hand, and then doing that fast accordion-like stuff with his right hand with the Oberheim 4-voice. And then all of a sudden into the guitar solo section, which is Tommy Shaw just ripping a guitar solo straight from hell. Da 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 dun 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 da 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 dun da. And Tommy just shredding. I mean, him with that Gibson Les Paul that he used at the time, just hitting notes that, you know, a Fender Stratocaster couldn't hit. But Tommy was just shredding, and then of course it ends with the harmonies of JY and Tommy going da 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 da. Oh my God, you'd be singing this for days. And this is my favorite Tommy Shaw song on the album, although I love the other two, "Fooling Yourself" and "Superstars." But this one's such a deep cut. Most people don't even know about the song. And then it finishes the the solo section, and then a final repeat of the chorus with Tommy Shaw's voice, this time drenched in flange and reverb. "Sometimes I feel like a man in the wilderness." Oh my God. And JY and Tommy singing the chorus. Tommy the low end, JY the high end, of course. Sometimes it makes no sense. Sometimes it makes no sense. Sometimes it makes no sense at all. Oh my God. And then Tommy scatsing, and then he hits a high scream. I can't hear my voice in high. And as the guitar solo at the end fades in, and Tommy just, I'll find it all. Oh my God. And on the album of The Grand Illusion, the song just fades out during that ending section. But if you have the Come Sail Away, the Styx Anthology, this is the reason why they have it, the full 7-minute version. Because the song, you lost 2 minutes of the song. The last 2 minutes of the song was faded out. So Tommy going, and then he hits one final scream, and then the guitar solo, I'm convinced is either JY or Tommy playing the ending solo, which is just going on and on and on. So you get a minute or so extra worth of music as Tommy is just shredding. And the fade out is now like 7 minutes. And they should have fit on the original album, but in those days of vinyl, they didn't want to ruin the sonic quality. But I think it could have fit on the vinyl record because the way side 2 stood, it was like 18 or 19 minutes, and side 1 was 20 minutes. So it could have evened out the playing time. So it would have been a 40-minute album rather than a 38.5 or so minute album. But yeah, the song's great. The band played it, obviously, on the subsequent tour in support of The Grand Illusion. Yeah, they played the song live, and they had to create a different ending where JY and Tommy would just go, into this jam thing, and Dennis DeYoung playing his string synthesizer, and then the band finishing with the big finish. But Man in the Wilderness, my God. If you don't like the song, God, you're not a fan of progressive rock. And yes, this song proved that Styx were progressive rock. Yeah, one of the more successful American progressive rock bands that ever walked. Excuse me. Just a killer tune. Now, we get to my favorite song on the entire album. The penultimate song to The Grand Illusion. And Dennis DeYoung's longest song in the album, Castle Walls. Oh boy. Boy, do I love this song. This song is, in my mind, the greatest Styx song ever recorded, and sadly the most overlooked. Being autistic, I can relate to the lyrics of the song. And Dennis DeYoung told me personally, because I talked to him on Rockline in March of 2009, when he was promoting his 100 Years From Now U.S. release, about the song. And with kind permission of the Bob Coburn estate, I'm going to let Dennis DeYoung explain the song. And me asking the question, and me giving him a compliment, and him joking with me, which was fun, because I love Dennis's sense of humor. So Dennis and the 2009 counterpart of yours truly, take it away.
Terrence is in Lake Worth, Florida. You're on Rockline with Dennis DeYoung, Terrence.
Thank you, Bob. Hi, Dennis. How's it going?
Hi, Terrence.
I have before I ask my question, I want to say that you're the greatest keyboard player that ever came out of rock history, and that's no lie.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. And Keith Emerson will be in here in a minute to slit my throat.
Thank you much. My question is pertaining to one of your keyboard masterworks on the Styx album, The Grand Illusion, the song Castle Walls. What was the inspiration behind that song, since it's probably the best Styx song ever made?
Wow. Well, the thing, Castle Walls is a song that was written at a very, very dark moment in my life, and I think it's what I was trying to express was this desire not to leave the protection and the confines of one's castle. And it has kind of a medieval sound because I wanted to bring that metaphor into it. But really, it was really about being depressed and fearful of going out into the greater, into the greater world and having to face possibly the dragons and the demons and everything else that was out there. How about that, buddy?
Yeah, there you go.
And it was inspired musically by and I've said this on stage. I tell this story that it was inspired by the movie The Exorcist. And it really was, the Tubular Bells music kind of had an influence on me.
That was hypnotic, the Mike Oldfield stuff, the Tubular Bells. That was really interesting stuff. The last time Keith Emerson was on, I said to him, are there any young keyboard players who you admire? And he said, such as whom? I said, Chris Martin from Coldplay. He looked at me and said, who? Ooh, not even an acknowledgement. Oh, Dennis is going to be quiet on that one.
No. Listen, I mean, Keith he's entitled to his opinion, but Keith is a wonderful keyboard player. There's just no question about it.
He's incredible.
Technically very proficient, and he gets his props. But I know who the guy in Coldplay is, and he's more. But he's not really a keyboard player like Keith Emerson. He's a guy who accompanies himself on writing songs. That's different. Mm-hmm. Keith Emerson is he just plays keyboards. That's what he does.
Thank you very much, Dennis, for explaining to the fans what the song was about. And I'll have more about that middle section in just a moment. And the songs, like I said, the song's lyrics are about a person who was afraid of leaving the confines of one's castles to go out into the world to find out what lurks out there. But in the end, things aren't all that bad outside the castle, unless you deal with the political mumbo-jumbo. Life is never what it seems, and every man must meet his destiny. Where the distant harbor meets the sky, there the battle rage like hell, and every dove has lost its will to fly. I mean, I'm quoting these lyrics. And of course, two different types of guitar solo things. Tommy Shaw with those guitar fills, those jazzy, lyrical guitar fills. In the interlocking things, just amazing. Dennis DeYoung's vocal performance, amazing. Everything about the song cries, amazing. And of course, the song is just, the way it builds an intensity in it. And how for the first half of the song, it just alternates between C minor and A flat. Its relative key does a series of that, and then it goes from C minor to A flat, then up to B flat to go back to C minor, to give it a little variety. Once in a dream far beyond these castle walls down in the bay where the moonlit water falls. Oh my goodness. Quoting these lyrics because the song is just so memorable. And, the way the song builds in intensity. And thinking the song was going to end at the da-dun, 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 dun, with that C minor-ish chord on the Hammond organ. Just brilliantly built up in intensity. Into that middle section, which Dennis DeYoung said was inspired by Tubular Bells, Mike Oldfield's song, which of course gained popularity in the legendary horror movie The Exorcist, which the band pre-Tommy Shaw era went to see when it was in the theaters back in 73, 74, and 4 of the 5 members of Styx were Catholics, and one of the members, J.Y., was a Lutheran. And the movie intimidated the guys in the band that Chuck Panazzo, who was rooming with Dennis DeYoung during gigs in those days, said, "Dennis, can we sleep with the lights on, please? I'm afraid to turn it off because that demon girl may come." And Dennis is like, all right, we'll sleep with the nightlight on. So that music in that movie kind of stuck with Dennis. And, yeah, he used it in the song, kind of in homage to the Tubular Bells music. And here's a strange twist of irony. You ready for the irony, folks? A few years after the song was released, when the band was touring for Cornerstone during the Grand Decathlon Tour, and all the way up to the end of 1981, Tommy Shaw, who joined the band in 1975, replacing John Serleski, was dating, Linda Blair. Yes, Tommy Shaw was in a relationship for 2 years with Linda Blair. And Dennis DeYoung even talked about the relationship and said, she was a sweetheart, a lovely person, very fun, full of energy, kept the drug dealers away from Tommy Shaw because she had just gotten sober. And on one off day during that tour, the Grand Illusion Tour, not the Grand Illusion Tour, the Grand Decathlon Tour, which was the Cornerstone Tour, Linda and Tommy took Dennis's daughter to go see the movie Roller Boogie. And yeah, I'm picturing Linda and Dennis's daughter having a fun time watching it, and then Tommy Shaw ranting and raving, "God, I hate this disco music in the movie. However, my girlfriend looks gorgeous, so I can't really complain." Oh my God. Who wouldn't? But yeah, the song is great. After that tubular bell section, it goes back into a repeat motif of the intro, the dunk, dunk. And then the organ swells, and then harmony guitars from Tommy and JY. And then JY's batshit guitar solo, setting up nicely for what's about to end, of course, with the final verse, which I already discussed, Far Beyond These Castle Walls, where I thought I heard Tiresias say, "Every life is never what it seems, and every man must meet his destiny." And just a killer tune, and sadly the song was not ever played live during the band's classic period, because it was kind of a studio creation. But Dennis DeYoung did play it live as of 2000-2001 after he was forced out of the band with his, with the orchestra and with his own current solo band. And he did the song on his Grand Illusion 40th anniversary tour. And the person who suggested him to play the song again live was his son Matthew, his youngest child. And he said to his father, he goes, "Dad, that progressive rock stuff you did was great. And Castle Walls is an awesome song." And Dennis is like, "Matthew, you weren't even born." He goes, "I know, Dad, but this is a great tune." And then again, Matthew was like urging his father to bring songs back like Castle Walls, Queen of Spades. So his son, who of course now has played drums on his dad's last few albums on a couple of tracks, including the Isle of Misanthrope, my God, and the grand finale, which I'm about to bring up, just a killer, amazing song Castle Walls is. And yeah, the way the song ends with that echoing guitar, the effect of the gling, 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 and as Dennis DeYoung held that chord, which then sets up nicely for the grand finale, which is, referencing Come Sail Away and Superstars at the beginning. And then the chorus of the Grand Illusion to different music, and this time in a different key. Instead of it being C sharp, it's in C natural. So if you think your life is complete confusion, 'cause your neighbor's got it made, just remember, please, it's a grand illusion. And deep inside, we're all the same. And Tommy Shaw doing those, those guitar solo fills. And then, of course, the da na 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 na, the JY's guitar solo bit, but Tommy playing the low parts and JY playing what he did on the title track at the beginning of the album. Kind of repeat motif bookending the Styx album like it began. Kind of like what Pink Floyd were doing at the time, bookending Dark Side of the Moon with a Heartbeat, Wish You Were Here with Shine On You Crazy Diamond, and earlier that year, Animals with Pigs on the Wing, and Genesis, of course, in '76 on A Trick of the Tail with, Squonk, the motif of, the repeat motif of the intro of the album of, Dance on a Volcano and Squonk, which they use at the end of Los Endos. So kind of like the repeat motif, but just a great way to wrap up and finish the album in a triumphant way. And of course, Styx would not play the song live until the band's 1997 20th anniversary tour for the Grand Illusion, where Dennis DeYoung, after Come Sail Away ended, would segue into the song, and the band would play it. And then the ending solo with Tommy and JY shredding as Dennis was playing. And that turned out to be the final tour where Dennis DeYoung is in the band. Then, of course, those live versions ended with not only Dennis DeYoung holding that C chord on the synthesizer, which was an Oberheim 4-voice, but on the 1997 Grand Illusion 20th anniversary tour was the Oberheim OB8. And then after the ending solo of Tommy and JY harmonizing, it then would end like Come Sail Away with a da dun 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 dun. Oh my God. Great way to end the album. And of course, Dennis DeYoung would cover this on his last album, 26 East Volume 2, which was released last year as the outro to the penultimate song in the album, Isle of Misanthrope. And yeah, Dennis DeYoung's son, Matthew, played the drums on the cover of Grand Illusion Finale, which was called GIF, acronym for Grand Illusion Finale. And just a great way to end the album, and looks like fittingly Dennis DeYoung's recording career for making albums, and I think, kind of ending where it began. Perfect way to end the Grand Illusion, and not much more to add to Grand Illusion Finale, but a great way to end the album. And, of course, the way to end Dennis DeYoung's career of making albums. So when the Grand Illusion was released, the album took time to catch on, but when it did, it climbed all the way to number 6 on the Billboard album chart in early 1978, which up until that point was the highest position of any Styx album up to that point. And its success, which was platinum initially and to date 3 million copies in the U.S. alone, it would be the first of 5 multi-platinum albums released by the band, was with the success of the Grand Illusion. And of course, the album, like I said, sold 3 million copies, number 6 on the Billboard album chart, and it led the albums Crystal Ball and Equinox to finally go gold a year or two after their initial release. So the Grand Illusion made Styx household names and legends in the rock world once and for all. And the album, oh my god, it's been re-released over the years in quite a few configurations. It was initially released on LP, cassette, and 8-track cartridge, which you could buy at record stores back then. And also the album was released on CD in the 80s, and then an audio mobile fidelity remaster done by, trying to think of that dude, Steve Hoffman, came out in the 2000s on gold CD, and there was a rumored remastered version that was set for release in the 2000s, but Tommy and JY didn't want it reissued. Why, I don't know, but Dennis DeYoung, if he had still been in the band, he would have ensured a remaster campaign for the Styx catalog would have happened, because Bill Levinson, who was running the reissue campaign at what was then Polygram and then later became Universal Music, he was for reissuing the Styx catalog as remasters in some deluxe editions. And Dennis would have perfectly had the albums remastered with either Ted Jensen, who was his right-hand man at mastering engineering for so many years, or the great Bob Ludwig. But the closest thing you can come to a proper Styx remaster of that album is if you take the remastered versions of the title cut, Fooling Yourself, Come Sail Away, Miss America, and Extended Man in the Wilderness, done by Bob Ludwig for the Come Sail Away anthology, with the remastered version of Superstars that was on Greatest Hits Part 2, and you would have been pretty much 3/4 of the way towards a proper remaster. The only songs that needed a remastering would have been Castle Walls and Grand Finale. Sadly, a missed opportunity because Tommy and JY, for some reason, fell out with Dennis DeYoung. Why? I'll never know. But Grand Illusion, still my favorite Styx album to this day, cliched as it sounds, but yeah, very classic, an album that I don't ever get sick and tired of. And yeah, this was actually, for a first album I ever bought with my own money, what a great pick. Because like I said, I bought it with my own money back when I was 9 years old. Already having lived with Cornerstone, Paradise Theater, Caught in the Act, the double live album. And then the Grand Illusion, of course, I got on cassette. And I've had it over the years on every format. Cassette, 8-track, was given an 8-track copy in the early 90s. CD, got that in the 90s, shortly after I was given the 8-track. And then I also got the album on, vinyl, with the poster. And that poster photograph, of course, was used on the Styx Greatest Hits Part 2 compilation. And in the grand scheme of things, Styx, of course, still hold the Grand Illusion in such a high regard. You know, the band played it live after Dennis DeYoung was forced out of the group, and then Dennis DeYoung, in retaliation, played the whole album live with his own solo band. So yeah, the Grand Illusion to this day, a classic album by all parties in the band Styx, past, present, and future. And of course, this review is respectfully dedicated to the memory of Styx drummer John Panazzo, who passed away in 1996 after years of struggling with alcohol abuse. And in my mind, when he passed away, Styx died with him. Because up until his passing, the guys in Styx all had a great fun together. And to me, John Panazzo was the glue, the cement that kept the bricks together. And in my mind, I don't think they should have replaced him. You know, I think they should have just done the Return to Paradise tour and the Grand Illusion tour and left it at that. Because, you know, John's drumming, which was kind of Keith Moon, John Bonham-like precision, you know, him and his brother Chuck were one of the greatest rhythm sections in rock. You know, Chuck's bass playing and John's thundering drums. And of course, this was the last album he used Slingerland drums, because he would graduate to Tama for the Pieces of 8 album and tour. So John Panazzo was like the cement that held him and his brother together. And of course, they started the band with Dennis DeYoung. And they, you know, the Panazzos, Dennis DeYoung, were also DeYoung was one of the bricks that John Panazzo cement held, and as was the cement that held JY's Hendrix-like lead playing and Tommy's acoustic and electric combo. And he was the link in the bricks, the cement, that held these bricks together. And when he died, I don't think Styx should have replaced him, because, you know, those they kind of foresaw the problems the band was going to have. And Todd Suckerman, bless him, he's an incredible drummer, but to fill that seat that John left is impossible. To me, it's like putting the wheel of a Trans Am onto a Porsche. It's a nice wheel, but won't fit on a Porsche. It's kind of like when Kenny Jones replaced Keith Moon. Roger Daltrey said it was like the wheel of a Cadillac onto a Rolls Royce. You know, I mean, sometimes losing a member of the band can be the end. John Bonham, Led Zeppelin. Predominantly for most, and keeping word for most of the time, Rick Wright, Pink Floyd. David Gilmour won't do any more Pink Floyd tours. One-offs, notwithstanding, but, you know, doing actual albums and tours as Pink Floyd. Basically, that opportunity sailed when Rick Wright passed away. Neil Peart, Rush. Trying to think who else. Members who passed away and then called it a day. Nirvana, Kurt Cobain, obviously. Trying to think. Van Halen. Yeah, you can't have Van Halen without Eddie Van Halen. Number of bands, you know, I can go on down the list. You know, any chance of a Beatles reunion went when John Lennon was assassinated. Although they did reunite with George Harrison and Paul McCartney and Ringo Starr to do Real Love. But to me, John Panazzo was such a great drummer, and when he died, the spirit of Styx died with him. And if he were alive today, he'd be pissed at Tommy and JY for what they did to Dennis DeYoung. Because John Panazzo and Dennis DeYoung were very close buddies. They were also the ones that wanted to push Styx into doing Beatles rock and roll type things and all that fun stuff. So this review is respectfully dedicated to the memory of John Panazzo, one of the guys at Kelly and Mouse Studios who did the album cover back in '77, and also to the memory of recording engineer Barry Mraz, who helped record those early Styx albums, including this one. May God rest the souls of John Panazzo. trying to think, Barry Mraz, and I think either Kelly or Mouse at Kelly and Mouse Studios. May God rest your souls. And that's my look at the Grand Illusion from Styx. And speaking of Styx recommendations, I'm going to recommend the said Dennis DeYoung 26 East Volume 2, which is his current and, as of this moment, final album, which features songs like Land of the Living, The Last Guitar Hero, which featured Rage Against the Machine, guitar shredder Tom Morello, The Isle of the Misanthrope, my God, I love that tune, Grand Illusion Finale, and a host of other songs. Just get the CD. I'll thank you later for it. And you can thank me later for that. And of course, I'm also going to recommend an album that I will do at some point, which I haven't had a chance to, but I will. David Gilmour, Rattle That Lock. Excuse me, yeah. An album that I love. Excuse me, my second favorite David Gilmour solo album. And it features 5/8, and then it's another album that sort of had a repeat motif, just like the Grand Illusion did. Begins with 5 a.m. and the instrumental in the same melody and key called And Then. You know, to sort of bookend the album. Of course, the title cut, Faces of Stone, Boat Lies Waiting, which was David's tribute to the late Rick Wright. Trying to think what else is on the album. Oh yeah, Dancing Right in Front of Me in Any Tongue, Beauty, The Girl in the Yellow Dress, Today, and of course the closing And Then. So those are my picks of the moment. And before I go, I'm going to recommend some radio shows and podcasts. Rock Talk with Mitch LaFon, Chris Jericho Podcast, Y2J for the Win, Eddie Trunk Podcast, and the Raconteurs with Guy Pratt and Gary Kemp from Nick Mason's Saucer Full of Secrets. Also going to recommend the following YouTube channels. Professor of Rock. His channel always wins. John Bodin and his classic rock channels on YouTube, he's also awesome. Mike Noland and his classic rock channels, always great to watch his videos. He tells it like it is, or it was, and he's one boomer that kicks, to quote the Marine Corps, recon ass, ooh-rah. Or as they say in the Marine Corps, ooh-rah. God bless the Marines. God bless the military. Melinda Murphy, despite the fact she's attached to one of my enemies, I leave nameless. Also, thank you to Brandon Snyder. His channel, always awesome. Lazarus' YouTube channel. Classic Rock Review with Barry. Another great channel. Darren Locke. How can anyone hate Darren Locke? It's humanly impossible. And lastly, my favorite, Pete Pardo, Sea of Tranquility, in his various videos, In the Prague Seat, Hudson Valley Squares, you name it. His channel, always awesome. His videos always rule. And, yeah, and Pete, I can say this from the bottom of my heart. Your Mets did deserve that World Series back in 1986, when that ball went through Bill Buckner's legs. So I am a humble man saying, yeah, our Red Sox dropped the ball literally. And your Mets were the better team that year. So before I go, here's some plugs for other podcasts and radio shows I want you cool fans of mine to give your love to. And to quote General MacArthur, I shall return.
Mistress Carey reporting for duty. That's right, after rocking the airwaves in Boston for 22 years on WAAF, welcome to the Mistress Carey podcast. And if you love rock, this weekly podcast is for you. I'll introduce you to new bands that I think you are going to love and keep you in touch with the bands that are already your favorites. I'll take you backstage and expose you to the people behind the rock. Plus, we'll talk about everything else that we know and love, like motorcycles, tattoos, skydiving, hot rods, food, booze, and so much more. And let's not forget all of the branches of our military, our veterans, and first responders. Everything you know and loved about the Mistress Carey show, but now I'm unfiltered and uncensored. Fuck yeah! And if you never heard me before, well, welcome to the party. Subscribe now so you don't miss Mistress Carey podcast.
Please state the nature of the medical emergency. brain damage with Pink Floyd.
This stuff can give you brain damage.
In the Pink Floyd radio show.
Use only as directed.
There is no downside in the moon, really. Matter of fact, it's all...
Your controls are set to the Random Precision Radio Network. This is Freudian Slip, an hour of Pink Floyd. I'm Craig Bailey. Find us online at FreudianSlip.com. Write to us at pink at FreudianSlip.com. Freudian Slip is a Random Precision production.
You're listening to Nights with Alice Cooper. I think my Speedo is starting to cut off the flow of oxygen to my head. And that's why I got so
temperamental with anyone who has the impertinence to question his wisdom, and hello, out pops his inner courier.
Hi, and welcome to In the Studio. Redbeard here with the stories behind history's greatest rock and roll albums.
You're welcome. Guitar up. 1, 2, 3.
Follow In the Studio on Facebook, at Redbeard Rocks on Twitter, and online at inthestudio.net.
Well, my friends, the classic rock brainiac has got to leave to recharge his brain. Thanks for listening to another edition of Terrence's Classic Rock Corner. I'll be back in the next episode with the first Van Halen album for its 45th anniversary. Plus, I got an Alice Cooper episode I'm working on. The Dio era, 1980 to 82. That construes of Black Sabbath's Heaven and Hell, Mob Rules, and Live Evil collections. And some other titles I'm going to be looking at. Supertramp, Crime of the Century, and then Famous Last Words. And then Kilroy was here from Styx, Dark Side of the Moon by Pink Floyd for its 50th anniversary, Houses of the Holy by Led Zeppelin for its golden anniversary. And also we'll be discussing the live document from that tour, The Song Remains the Same. So what will it be? I will let you know. But for now, it's the Classic Rock Brainiac. Thank you all for listening and watching. I love you all. Don't let the bastards bring you down. Thank you very much indeed. I love you. Good night. God bless you. Terrence's Classic Rock Corner podcast was written, edited, produced, so forth and so on by yours truly, the Classic Rock Brainiac, Terrence Reardon. The intro and outro music is Confrontation by Craig Safan, taken from the film soundtrack to the movie Thief. Copyright 2023, TJR Rocksponge Incorporated, all rights reserved. Once again, thanks for listening and or watching. I love you all. Good night. God bless you.